Welcome everyone to this battle between India's Gukesh Domaraju and Wei Yi. This is a huge clash that we have on our hands today here in Norway Chess Stavanger. Gukesh and Wei Yi played an incredible game at the Chess Olympiad 2024 where Gukesh triumphed, helping India win the gold medal. But Wei Yi has been playing some phenomenal chess and is now the China number one. For years it was Ding Liren, but now Wei Yi has surpassed him, and well, he's on the rise. He has beaten Magnus Carlsen in this tournament already, and he's definitely the player who is very dangerous when it comes to Armageddons, because he's beaten not just Magnus but also Hikaru Nakamura. And here Gukesh has the black pieces, Wei Yi has white, and we have the time control of 2 hours for both the players. And then after 40 moves, there is just a increment of 10 seconds per move. We have the guest there who's waiting for the first move to be made, and the photographer has arrived, and we have the move c3 perhaps. And handshake to both the players there. We are ready to go. Wei Yi with the white pieces. What is his first move going to be? The players shake hands. And I believe that Wei Yi opens his game generally with e4, and he does it. Pawn to e4. And Gukesh goes for c6. The Karo Khan. And a very interesting choice by Gukesh, because generally he plays e4, e5. But here he's in a fighting mood and he wants to play something slightly less symmetrical. The Karo Khan is considered to be a fighting weapon. d5. And let's see what Wei Yi's choice is. He takes on d5. ed5. And Gukesh takes back cd5 here. And in this exchange variation, there's no symmetry unlike the French, because here white has 4 pawns, black has 2, but what black has is more central control while white develops more quickly. Pawn comes up to c3. Now generally how white wants to play here is put the knight out, put the bishop out, and castle. So moves that have been played before by black are knight f6 and queen c7, but e6 is a slightly new twist to this line, because you do block your bishop on c8 by the pawn, but that's fine. Gukesh is going to later on use this bishop to perhaps break f6, e5. It's a very ambitious line, I must say. Knight e7 played by Gukesh. And Wei Yi puts his rook on e1, putting pressure down the e file. Black castles here. And somehow this Greek gift isn't going to work because of king g6, queen g4, and f5. And black is doing fine. So Wei Yi here plays the move c4. And it's perhaps a little shaky, because knight b4 is a very nice move that Gukesh has, and he plays it. And why is this so good is because, let's say you go bishop f1, I can take, bishop takes, I can play b6, then bishop b7, and put my knight in this beautiful central square. So he pushes his pawn to c5. Wei Yi is like, take my bishop if you want, but I'm going to take your bishop here. And knight takes d3. You can't take on d6 because of knight e1, d7, knight f3, check, very important, and queen e7 when black is completely fine. So queen d3 played. And now just bishop c7. He goes bishop b8. Also interesting. And white has now the space. Black has the bishop pair and hopes for central expansion. See what black plays here. Black plays the move a5. And the idea is to put the knight on the b6 square here. He goes bishop to g5, pinning the knight. And f6 played by Gukesh, a very good move. And I like actually Gukesh's position because, what he can do next is b6. He stopped b4, bishop h4, and now this move bd7. So that when you play b6, there's no knight a4 business. The bishop stops it. So I think this is a great move here. But one tempting move for black is definitely knight f5. And while that move, Gukesh plays it. And I might be too harsh to say that it's a mistake. It's not really a mistake. But the point is, after, let's say, bishop g3, taking this bishop is not a great idea. He goes bishop g3. You need to think about this b6 stuff. But Gukesh takes. And I have this feeling that what remains on the board seems to be much more in white's favor than what has gone out of it. Like white is now doing very well. Maybe you want to go g5, but that's really a very, very dangerous move. He goes bishop d7. It's a nice move. But b3, I love this move by Wei Yi because he's going for a3 and b4. Very strong idea. Goes rook to e8. And now, you could have even thought of b6 first, but maybe he was afraid of c6, bishop c6, rook e6, which is the reason why he went rook e8 to defend the pawn. And Gukesh, after a3, goes rook e7. And so he's kind of given up on the idea of b6 because he realizes that it's actually white's terrain there. And maybe he wants to go this bishop e8, bishop h5 ideas. b4 by Wei Yi. And Wei Yi playing so logically here, he's putting pressure on Gukesh for sure. And Gukesh goes b6, striking on this pawn chain. And Wei Yi comes back to the board. Pushes pawn to b5. Look at these pawns. They are so dangerous. Bishop e8. It's as if like black is getting crushed for space. c6 could come in. But I guess Wei Yi also likes that his pawns are on b5 and c5 because they control so many squares. So he goes rook e3. Maybe not the most accurate. Knight a4 would have been very, very strong. But rook e3. What Wei Yi wants to do first is just double down the e file and put pressure. And so Gukesh comes back to the board and puts down his move rook e3. And now the bishop comes to c7. And Wei Yi brings his rook to e1. Hitting the pawn, bishop f7 makes a lot of sense. Now the d5 pawn is defended. So somewhere, if e5 comes in, that would be great. Knight a4 played here by Wei Yi. Attacking the b6 pawn a bit. He goes rook b8, defending the pawn. And queen e2. There's hardly any counterplay here for black, it feels, for now. How is Gukesh going to wriggle out? Well, he first goes rook c8. And maybe he makes a square for the bishop here. Because he wants to take, push. Oh my god. Rook c3 by Wei Yi. A great move. And now the threat is to take on b6, bishop b6 and rook c8. So he takes on c5. And Gukesh making this very dangerous decision strategically, but he needs something to breathe, which is why he's gone for this d4, attacking the rook. Wow, the rook has to move. Maybe rook d3 here. could be an idea. He plays his rook to d3. And Gukesh goes rook d7. He defends the pawn here. And now pawn to b6. Oof. The bishop is pushed back. If white would have gotten c6, it was game over. But c6, difficult to execute. Here, Wei Yi goes queen d2. He misses his chance. b7 was that chance. If rook b7, knight d4, and white has excellent control in this position. b7 was super strong. Also, rook c7 doesn't work because of knight b6. But turns out queen d2 is what Wei Yi wants to do. He wanted to attack here and here. Gukesh is like, take the a5 pawn if you want. I'm going to play in the center. Queen takes a5 has been played here. And now these pawns could become dangerous because Gukesh, look at this. Bishop comes to life. All of a sudden, things are changing. Knight d2. The bishop is stopping the pawns. And f5. The time on the clock also 12 minutes for Gukesh, 11 for Wei Yi. The position has sharpened like anything. Queen b4. And Gukesh goes queen f6. And he's going to, at some point, try for the e4 move. f4 played by Wei Yi, trying to weaken the d4 square. Pawn takes pawn by Gukesh. And now he can just take on d4. He takes it. Queen d4. And does Gukesh want to keep the queens on the board? It could be very dangerous potentially for white to keep the queens. Queen h6 is a great move. But Gukesh decides to simplify. He takes on d4. Rook d4. Attacking the bishop here. And now bishop c6. It's turned out in the way that suddenly the knight is attacked. And so it takes. And if the knight moves, c5 is falling. And b7 played here by Gukesh, by Wei Yi. Gukesh goes rook d8 super quick. Knight jumps in. Bishop comes to c6. Gukesh has 5 minutes 34 seconds. Wei Yi is down to 1 minute 39 seconds. Knight to c4. The knight jumps in. Knight wants to go to a5. Then c6, c7. But he takes the pawn. Bishop takes b7. G takes f4 played. And now bishop takes f4. Chop off this pawn. It feels like Gukesh is going to win this game, although the position is still even, but with such less time on the clock for Wei Yi and these two bishops, so dangerous. King f2, it's very tough to defend. Rook d3 played, and now he must go knight d7, trying to create his own play. Well, Wei Yi does play. Oh, he goes knight c8, not the best move, but he is trying for some kind of a mating attack here on the king. But just h5, very strong. Gukesh also down to 1 minute 19 seconds. 52 seconds for him now after h5. Knight comes to d6. He's attacking the bishop here. And this rook c3, fantastic move. If you take on e4, I'll take on c4. So he goes check, king h7 played. Clearly winning position for Gukesh now. Wei Yi goes rook f8, but no, rook c2 check is game over. If you go here, let's say king g1, bg3 with a mating idea. And if you go king e1, then still it's lost because of bd3 and I have check and mate. No, but Gukesh goes bg3 first. King e2. And Gukesh here plays bishop g3, king e2, takes the pawn on g2. The knight comes to e3 now, attacking the bishop. He goes bishop h3, defending. Still some chances here for Gukesh. After that mistake he made, takes. He must give this check. And then king d2, play rook f3. And this h pawn is super strong. But he makes an error here. Bishop e5. It's so complicated with these knights. Knight e4 jumping in. He's threatening a check. If you go king g6 here, knight h4, it leads to a mate. That's how strong these knights are. He goes bg4, king d2. And Gukesh with just 20 seconds chops the pawn. Hopes that there's no checkmate here. Knight e7 played. Maybe the threat knight g5. Check here, rook a2. King d3. And Gukesh makes a quick check, gaining 10 seconds on the clock. King goes to c4. And now bishop f6. That's kind of a bailout move here. Knight takes, pawn takes. What a tense game this has been. Rook takes f6. Pawn goes to h4. c6 played. And h3. The rook tries to come back. And rook g3 with just 3 seconds on the clock. The bishop does control the queening square. Knight comes back to d5. King comes up. The threat was a check. Knight f4. And he plays king to g5. Pawn c7. Anything can happen still because of lack of time. But the position is equal. King comes closer. He goes behind the pawn. The knight jumps in. Gukesh brings his rook back to c6. King comes in. King h4. Threatening king g3 and h2. Rook to b2. Bishop to f3. Attacking this knight here. The knight drops back. But can we simply take the pawn? Yes, he does. King comes to f4. Can Gukesh use his h-pawn to queen here? Bishop c6. And now knight check. King h5. The rook jumps in. And he's coming back from behind. King g6. Rook h8 played. And bishop to d7. Well, Wei Yi gives a check first. King goes back. And now takes on h3. Gukesh gives a check. But it's not going to help now. If he tries to attack, he'll just defend it with rook f3. Wei Yi being very sure about his move. Bishop f5. And the players agree to a draw. What a game this was. What a game. Wei Yi was completely winning out of the opening in the early middle game. Then Gukesh fought back, was completely crushing. Both players just don't know what to say. They just don't even know. The arbiter says there's an Armageddon after this. They are like, oh my god, we have to play another game. What's that? We just had an absolutely intense fight right now. And well, that's the nature of Norway chess. Once you finish the classical game, you have to play the Armageddon. If the classical game ended in a draw, I must say that both players can be upset with this result. Both players can also be happy with this result. I want to just show you that moment where Gukesh was completely winning and had a checkmate up his sleeve, but he missed it. So this was the moment where Gukesh, his opponent, Wei Yi, played rook f8. And now this move, rook c2, is very strong. If king goes to f1, then there is a mate which is very pretty. Check, king e1, check, king f2, and checkmate. So this pattern is very nice, where the bishops take away all the squares and the rook delivers the checkmate. And if the king goes to g1, then I go bishop g3, once again threatening a mate. And after knight e3, which is the only move, you lose the piece. And if you go king e1, then you go same idea with bishop d3, threatening a check. And king f2, there's a checkmate, which is unstoppable. So this was the chance that Gukesh had, but he missed it by playing bishop g3 and then letting the king escape here, and then the game ended in a draw.